Yes, I'm Elaine Packard. I chair the Water Sentinels team, and I want to start off by acknowledging the team who organized this webinar. First, the Water Sentinels core team, which is Elaine Giesel, Debbie Neustadt, and me. Doris Solarius with the Toxics team, and Shruti Bhatnagar who's the National Board of Director. So welcome everyone, and thank you for attending the webinar. This is a kind of a meet and greet occasion to give everyone a brief overview of 10 volunteer-run Grassroots Networks teams that work on freshwater quality and quantity, and introduce us to you as resources for your chapters. If you would put the screen up now for Grassroots, a slide, please. We apologize if we've missed anyone, but while we know that chapters are working on local water issues, the Grassroots teams work on a national and regional basis. This is a statement from the Sierra Club's organization chart. And it says what the Grassroots Network purpose is. We collaborate with chapters and groups to provide expertise and experience, training, facilitate advocacy, and beyond national priority campaigns. Keep in mind, we're all volunteers and we have no staff, but we do our best, and they're all really hardworking teams. So the format will be that, and my cat is meowing. The format is that they're going to be 10 teams, and each one will have a slide and 5 minutes to go into more detail about what their team does. We will have a link at the very end that has the link to each web page for the teams. Elaine Giesel will introduce each presenter. At the very end, Shruti will facilitate questions. So for some housekeeping, in chat, please put your name, where you are located, and your chapter, if you know it. And you can put comments in the chat. For example, like, hey, would you do another webinar on this issue? But if you have a question about one of the presentations, that goes in the Q&A. If you do not have Q&A on your screen, you will see a circle with 3 dots. If you click on that circle, it gives you options, and you can pick Q&A as an option, and it should show up on your screen. So questions will go in that box. Now, just to facilitate it for Shruti, the first word in your question, please identify which presentation. For example, if it's about the Colorado River, start off your question with just the word Colorado. And then Shruti will know which team it is, so that we make sure that we can spread the questions out more evenly over all of the teams. I think those are the main, and we'll keep you on mute. And we are recording, and we will send the slides and the recording to everyone who has registered. We're up to 33 people. So I am a very,
114.
Yeah, but we have 33 on the call right now, so it's getting up there. Thank you all for being here. A lot to talk about water. So it's my pleasure to introduce Shruti Bhatnagar. Shruti rose through the ranks of volunteering in her Maryland chapter to be elected as a national board of director for the Sierra Club. She became vice president for conservation in 2024. And upon assuming this role, she showed a lot of interest in the Grassroots Network teams. Thank you very much, Shruti. She asked to meet with the teams, and during her meeting with Water Sentinels, she recommended that we have a webinar to showcase the freshwater work to the club members, which brings us to today. Shruti is a true ally and a water warrior, and we're very fortunate that she is on the board. So Shruti, I welcome you to this webinar, and I know you have some introductory remarks to make.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Hi, everybody. I am really excited and honored to be here today and to be a part of this conversation. My name is Shruti Bhatnagar. My pronouns are she, her. I'm calling in from Maryland, from the occupied land of the Piscataway tribe. As Elaine mentioned, I am on the national board, and I'm also the vice president for conservation for the National Sierra Club. I want to start by sharing a bit of my story and why this issue is so important to me personally. So I grew up in India, and I was born in a state that is a desert area where there was huge water scarcity. And growing up in India, I remember that um, women from our communities would have to carry pots, actually, not just one pot, but several pots on top of their head, one on top of the other, and travel for miles to go across to bring water, and then travel back for several miles to come back so that they would have access to water. Fortunately, my family moved to a metropolitan area, and while I come from a very modest income family, and there were times that we went through a lot of challenges, growing up in the metropolitan city, we were able to have access to water without having to carry pots and go for several miles to bring water. But still, we had scarcity of water, which was not always available. We were not privileged. Water was only available for a couple of hours in the day, either in the morning or in the evening. Some of the neighborhoods I lived in, someone from the family would have to stand in a big line with people from the community to get water in the day. So we would go early morning at 6 o'clock, stand in the line. There was a water tank or a facility where we could get water and bring 1 or 2 buckets of water home. And that was the water that we had, whatever we could get to clean dishes, to use for everyday needs. And that was really, really hard. And then eventually we were able to be in a situation where there was some mechanism of storing some water. But again, it was being distributed to several families in the community. So we would only have access to it a couple of hours in the day, an hour or two in the morning, an hour or two in the evening. And everything was centered around making sure that that was the time that we could use water or get water to use for our everyday needs. And then also the quality of water wasn't that great. So we had to boil the water for our use for kitchen and for drinking and for cooking our meals. So I grew up understanding the value of water and recognizing that it is a very valuable resource, and it's not something that everybody necessarily has access to, and we need to conserve that. And again, growing up in a family where I saw the impacts of environmental degradation, how they impacted my family members, some of whom were impacted by the poor quality of water and the kind of health issues that it can create for people, this is something that I deeply care about. Water was not just a resource for us. It wasn't a resource, it was a commodity. And its scarcity meant that we had to ration it very carefully, using every drop sparingly for drinking, for cooking, for all the needs. And that's the kind of stuff that impacts people across the world in countries where it isn't available. But we are also seeing now in some of the states here, as in California, I understand now that people have been asked to preserve 15% or so of their water consumption. So with climate change impacting communities across the world, these are the issues that are impacting all of us. And access to clean water is a major necessity and a major public health issues with significant implications for communities' well-being, for their economic stability, and for social and environmental justice. We know that the lack of access of clean water overwhelmingly and disproportionately impacts communities of color and historically marginalized communities who suffer from inadequate water infrastructure, leading to water contamination and health crisis. And so I just wanted to share that context with you for you to know that this is why I deeply care about making sure that we are fighting for, for years, Sierra Club has fought for the environmental issues. And we are in a moment in time today where a lot is at stake with the decisions that are being made at the federal level. And I have to give a huge shout out to our grassroots network teams, especially the Water Sentinels. I know have been working really, really hard to advocate for legislation on the federal level. In the time period that I have been in this position, I've had to interact with Debbie and Elaine, two Elaines that are on the call. And I know that they are in coalitions and they are constantly reminding us of opportunities that come up at the federal level for Sierra Club to weigh in when we can have a voice to make sure that we are strong advocates for ensuring water quality issues. So again, really honored to be here. And I think the Grassroots Network team is doing incredible work. And I want to make sure that I am here not just to support that work, but also to help us grow our teams, our movement, so that we can be more inclusive, so that we can make sure that we are stronger in our advocacy work. So thank you so much, Elaine, for giving me this opportunity. And I look forward to today's conversation and then facilitating the Q&A at the end.
Thank you so much, Rudy. We're so pleased that you're part of this. So the first slide is on the Water Sentinels team, which is sponsoring this right now. And I want to reintroduce myself as the chair of this team. And Water Sentinels became a grassroots team in 2015. And you can see our vision is to ensure that communities have access to clean and affordable drinking water, and the quality and quantity of surface and groundwater sustain the ecosystems on which all life depends. We spend a great deal of our work is on the Clean Water Act, which is the federal act that protects, it's the primary federal law governing water pollution. So it is a major act, and we advocate, we work on legislation, and we engage in grassroots activism. So our team was formed initially as water quality monitoring by citizen scientists dating back to 2001. And some of you may still have these teams. We expanded our work in 2015 to cover both water quality and water quantity. We actually work with all of the teams in this webinar and many more because water connects with everything. You'll learn more details about our work in the following presentations by 4 of our sub-teams. Our core team focuses a lot on federal policy. We actually have an active discussion listserv, which we encourage you to join. And Debbie sends a memo about federal and state water actions to more than 200 water leaders in virtually every chapter in the club. Excuse me. This is how we work on water policy. And so we partner with the club's federal policy team, which is Melinda Pierce, for any of you who know her name. And she is the lead over the lobbyists in the DC office. And we inform the volunteer water activists nationwide. That would be Debbie's memos. And here's who we collaborate with. So Debbie and I will go through a little bit of detail on each of these. And Debbie will do the first one. Is Debbie there?
Yes, I'm trying to mute myself so I don't have static. So it took me a while to remember that. So I often put in this memo to chapter and group leaders, which if you're a member of the Sierra Club, you'll be invited to get that memo if you already don't get it. The Clean Water for All Coalition, the Sierra Club is on the steering committee, but we have very active people that sponsor the working groups. And there are 3 of them. League of Conservation Voters is one of the leads for the federal policy one. I work closely with the Natural Resources Defense Council. Becky is her first name. And then the nutrient subteam right now is working on the Farm Bill. So that is something that I can work on with my senators and congressmen because I'm from Iowa and they're on those committees. I've been reaching out to people who have members that are on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. That does not give you a clue that they handle the Clean Water Act, but they do. That's all I have as far as Clean Water for All Coalition.
Well, and we attend meetings, like they meet once a week on federal policy, and then the nutrient one meets, and Debbie attends that one and attends the one on nutrients, and I think it was infrastructure. So these are meetings that are attended by executive directors of major environmental organizations. And Debbie and I attend representing the Sierra Club. And it's through them that we get coalition comment letters to sign on to, which we then will recommend to the lobby team. Would you please sign these letters? So that's the connection between Water Sentinels, the coalition, and the federal and our national staff. Yeah, so Debbie, you want to say something about the WRDA?
Well, Elaine Giesel was our contact on our leadership team for that. Again, that is a piece of legislation that is handled through the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate has a committee. That name is blanking me right. Blank. I don't know if Elaine Giesel wants to talk about WRDA at all, but it's mostly around Army Corps of Engineers projects.
Yeah, I've compared it to the Farm Bill for water. It's just a really important bill that comes up every 2 years.
Yeah, the next bullet, the third one down, is the Clean Water for All, Protect Our Waters national campaign, with a focus on protecting state waters no longer protected under the Clean Water Act. In 2023, there was a major U.S. Supreme Court decision which redefined what waters of the United States are, and that is under the Clean Water Act. And it's often referred to as WOTUS. And WOTUS is the traditional navigable waters, a relatively permanent body of water connected to a traditional navigable water. And again, the Clean Water Act is the primary federal law governing water pollution. So when the definition of what are the waters of the United States was redefined, it really removed federal protection under the Clean Water Act for more than 50% of the wetlands and streams in the country, depending on the region. Protection of these waters is now the responsibility of each state. Protect Our Waters is a national coalition that works with activists and environmental organizations to help write laws that protect their state waters. Several Sierra Club chapters are working with this coalition, and if your chapter is interested, you can contact this coalition through the link on the last slide, or on this slide, actually. They're very organized, and they have a lot of resources. So it's a great group to learn more about. And our core team works very closely with them. So now River Network.
So traditionally, the Sierra Club has been active on the Clean Water Act, and through our Toxics Committee has worked a little bit on safe drinking water. But when historically the bipartisan infrastructure law came into was passed a couple years ago, that's when the funding for drinking water was kicked up a notch. And River Network, I think, has always had resources for local entities to work with their drinking water facility. But several organizations combined have webinars on the state revolving funds that are available for drinking water, lead service line replacement, and emerging contaminants, PFAS that are in drinking water and sewage treatment. And they have, if you go to River Network's website, it's kind of like going down a rabbit hole because there's just so much information there. And I try to attend all of their quarterly meetings on drinking water. And it's how I learned about a customer assistance programs.
Yeah. I think we're ready, Elaine G. Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
speaking of customer assistance programs. You know, and Amy posted in the chat about her community. And I think most of us are used to, I know here in Des Moines, the controversy is nitrates in our drinking water and whether that's really safe or not. But most communities do have safe, according to the Safe Drinking Water Act, reliable and affordable water services. But there are communities that do not. Some places have never had adequate water and water infrastructure. That's kind of hard to believe in the United States. The communities were built without that. Others are struggling with aging systems, you know, service pipes that leak, unaffordable rates through water bills that just don't make sense because the water utility doesn't have the right software or whatever problem they have. And people are surprised by their $1,000 water bills, and poor water quality, even if it's controversial as to what is safe. There's infrastructure issues I've already mentioned, rising costs, increasing economic segmentation. I think we've all heard of redlining. Toxins in drinking water have adversely affected water utilities and low-income customers. The Water Affordability Subteam works at every level of government, and I'll go into that a little bit more detail after I'm done with this slide. That's my daughter-in-law and my granddaughter when she was 2 years old. Water affordability policies, regulations, and infrastructure funding will ensure that all people have an equitable share of access to safe drinking water while protecting the environment. Some of our sub-team members are on this call today. Susan Patton is from Kentucky. Gloria is here. Doris is here. We participated in conferences put on by the U.S. Water Alliance and the River Network. Last year, Gloria and I went to the River Network's River Valley in Grand Rapids. In the past, we've organized online events that have highlighted the issues of customer assistance programs and federal funding of clean water and safe drinking water projects. We sponsor a book club on the impacts of racism in our society that has led to that economic segmentation mentioned in my slide. I monitor local water shutoffs and include them in our memo to chapter and group water leaders. We monitor cities that have adopted rate-based water rates based on the ability of the customer to pay. Because of the occurrence of water shutoffs due to unpaid water bills, we advocate for water customer assistance program, and there's an example of that. During COVID, there was money to fund a program like this. It was through the Department of Health and Human Services, and it was called LIWAP, which stood for Low Income Water Assistance Program. That program paid the water utilities when the customer applied for assistance and they had their water bill was in arrears. Here's another more complicated way to impact a ratepayer's water bill. The construction of sewage treatment plants, stormwater, and drinking water plants make safe, affordable water. And that's the aim of the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. To that end, sewage treatment facilities are built, stormwater is managed. To have safe drinking water systems, water is collected from the source, processed to meet safe drinking water standards, and delivers it to users. One way to do that is through a federal program that provides loans for construction of these facilities. And this program is called the State Revolving Loan Funds, or SRF. So let me explain a little bit about that program. And that's one of the Clean Water for All's working groups. They call themselves infrastructure. The states receive a capitalization grant with funds made available by the federal government. The state has established a water pollution control revolving fund, and these funds provide the basis for capitalization for each of the states' revolving fund. The fund can be increased with state contributions, the state issuing bonds, and the repayment of loans. So I've already mentioned that I work through the Clean Water for All group that advocates for these federal funds. And last week they had a the House of Representatives Transportation and Infrastructure Committee had a meeting, on safe drink, on these state water revolving funds, and I heard a lot about them. So I was pat myself on the back. I understood 95% of what was said.
Debbie, we need to move on to our next speaker, if you can wind it up.
Yes, our subteam meets the last Tuesday of the month at 7:30. And any Sierra Club member is welcome to join.
And I thank you, Debbie. We're going to move on to Eric Weck, who has been working with us on our water quality monitoring teams. Eric.
Yes, thanks, Elaine, and everybody who's on the call. Water Sentinels began as a Sierra Club program in 2011, led by Scott Dye. Its core mission being to protect, improve, and restore waters of the U.S. while creating outdoor opportunities for youth across the country. In 2012, the program was budgeted at $1 million before the funding was withdrawn. With that level of financial backing and the power of Sierra Club volunteers, citizen scientists, degreed professionals, and enthusiasts, a broad slate of engagement activities, including water quality monitoring, were enabled and fostered in many chapters and groups across the country. Under the direction of volunteer chemistry and ecology professionals, Water Sentinels verifiable test data have held industry and government entities to account, culminating in monetary penalty judgments, public journalism exposure, and policy changes. In the absence of program funding, several Water Sentinels teams continue their sampling and testing efforts, often through the Sierra Club grant process. Rios Bravos in New Mexico is a great example. Water Sentinels volunteers of all stripes continue to engage in water quality advocacy, where chapter and group Water Sentinel teams no longer collect and test samples. Watershed protection and water treatment facilities operations garner some of that focus. There are several organizations which maintain funded water quality monitoring programs. The Isaac Walton League, which has done monitoring since 1969, is one. Through engagement with local consortia of like-minded water advocates, sufficient pressure to change can be brought to bear on industry and governments. The repeal of a Utah Lakes law in 2024 was a major victory for local Sierra Club water quality advocates and allies. Finding and engaging with allied organizations is a tactic short of initiating a water quality monitoring effort where funding is not immediately available to a group or chapter. In 2018 through 2022, in the absence of programmatic funding, the Water Sentinels leadership team reviewed the current water quality monitoring activity taking place in previously active chapters and groups. Compared with 2012 levels, most chapters and groups do not monitor as they had. The Water Sentinels continue to field occasional questions from various Sierra Club members and facilitate finding them answers through the network of legacy Water Sentinels. A list of these contacts is maintained by the leadership team. During the same 2018 to 2022 time period, water sampling and testing training materials were developed using heritage work done by the likes of Sierra Club members Kirk Cunningham and others. The documents are available to view by anyone on the internet who has the hyperlink. They are referred to as Water Quality Monitoring 101 and Monitoreo de Calidad del Agua 101 in Spanish. They provide background to water quality monitoring principles and a notional approach for implementing a water quality monitoring function. In 2021, a proof of concept was conducted with the help of an Edison, New Jersey high school student, Jason Zhang. The proof of concept provided rudimentary water sampling and testing equipment, along with training materials. Based on the cost of the equipment and limited shelf life of the testing reagents, it is not viable for the leadership team to shepherd this sort of effort. Gloria Charland's Manitou Creek Watershed Alliance participated in using some of these materials as well. And to close, the leadership team plans to hold a webinar in the latter half of this year, presenting a panel review of current water quality monitoring efforts, which Sierra Club members and Water Sentinels teams are leading or participating in. If anyone on this call has interest in participating in a panel discussion of this sort, please leave your name and email address in the chat, along with the word panel or webinar, so that you can be contacted. Thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you, Eric, and we'll move on. Please do enter your name and contact information if you're interested in being in that webinar in the chat. Elaine, you're up again on the Western Waters Subteam.
This is a team I formed 5 years ago because of really a passion I have for Western water. Having camped throughout the West, it became clear to me that how water is managed in the West is very, very challenging. And climate change, you can see, contributes to reduction in the quality and quantity of available fresh water in the Western states. Problems are declining rivers, water in rivers, streams, aquifers. Droughts are becoming definitely more widespread and prolonged. And whoops, where did I go?
I'm sorry.
And
My bad.
yeah, diminishing water supplies affect water quality. So the mission of this team, subteam, is we are a clearinghouse of information about water resource management at the state and regional level. We educate and advocate for strategies to protect and restore in-stream flows, groundwater reserves, and water quality. We engage activists through webinars, a webpage, a very active discussion listserv. And we communicate with national staff on federal water issues. So the challenges to water management in the West, and you read a lot about it. With water law, water of the state is really basically in charge of protecting its state waters. The federal government has a role in as much as some of the waters are considered WOTUS or waters of the US. And so this is the only time the federal government steps in. And some of you are probably aware of that a lot of your states do not protect your water well. I happen to live in Washington State. We have some very good water protection, but I'm very aware of how this is not uniformly true. So as I presented earlier with a Protect Our Waters, the West, the American West, has been particularly hurt by the new definition of waters of the US that are protected under the Clean Water Act. If you look at a map of where wetlands and streams are now no longer protected, the big red areas are in the American West. So a couple of our chapters, Colorado and New Mexico, are working right now with the Protect Our Waters campaign. They're working on state legislation to strengthen the laws protecting state waters. This means that states have to come up with more money to add staff and rulemaking so that they can now protect these waters, no longer under federal protection. Our sub-team functions primarily as a forum to share information about how states are protecting their ground and surface waters and how our chapters are involved. So we learn from each other. We are a resource for each other. We have monthly presentations that are really interesting. If you want to know about water, like we've looked at the state plans for Colorado, California, Kansas. We've looked at how New Mexico is protecting and restoring its wetlands. We've looked at the great rivers like the Verde and the Rio Grande, at great inland bodies of water like the Great Salt Lake and the Salton Sea, dam removal on the Klamath in Oregon and California, the effect of produced waters for mineral extractions in New Mexico. There's a lot to learn, a lot to share. Our discussion listserv is very active, and I believe, what have we got on the time here?
1 more minute.
I'm done. We
All
love to
right.
have you join our calls. It's really makes you want to come to the West and explore.
And I will remind you that at the last slide, and this will be available to all the attendees, there are web addresses so that you can contact these various teams and a way to contact individuals as well. And one of these subgroups of the Western Waters is the Colorado River Task Force. And Ken, you're up next.
Okay, the Colorado River Task Force, we work with all the chapters that are within the Colorado River Basin, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming, to talk about and see what we can do with the ongoing crisis in the Colorado River. As most of you know, the river and the Southwest have been going through what they call a mega drought since 2000. And it's probably not simply a drought. Droughts have an ending point. This is more a climate change driven aridity of the basin. And it's right now managed by laws and agreements that go back to the early 20th century and are in many ways out of date. And it's very complex. We're worried about what's coming down the road with the Bureau of Reclamation and the new administration. But we're looking for solutions, reasonable solutions for these management issues. We're also seeking to change the paradigm in the ways that the river is considered. In the past, it has always been looked at as basically a water supply plumbing system from Rocky Mountain National Park and the Wind River Range in Wyoming down to the All-American Canal and the Morales Dam in Mexico. And that Morales Dam is basically the end of the river. Rarely gets down to the Gulf of Mexico, or not to the Gulf of Mexico, to the Sea of Cortez. And good thing I didn't say Gulf of America. Anyway, one of the things we're looking at changing and is beginning to change is the inclusion of the Native American tribes. There are 33 tribes in the Colorado River system that have historically been ignored in all the management decisions. That's beginning to change. They have rights to almost 25% of the entire river flow. And they have a hard road to follow. I mean, it's tough with them. And from what Shruti said and Debbie was talking about, if you want to see a place in this country where there is, I was going to say inadequate, but non-existent water availability in people's homes, where they have to drive miles just to get a tank of fresh water, go to the Navajo Nation in Arizona and New Mexico and Utah. We also participate in many of the conferences, major conferences that are involved in Colorado River management. The big one being CRUA, the Colorado River Water Users Association. It's the annual meeting of the big water buffaloes in Las Vegas every year, but also that one with the Getchus Wilkinson Center in Boulder, which I think is a little more forward thinking about what we can do with the river. And we also organize webinars about the river and the conditions on the river and the challenges we face. And we have a book club too. And our last book was Life After Deadpool by Zach Podmore. And our next book is Science Be Damned by Eric Kuhn and John Fleck, about how when the agreements were started back in 1922, the first agreements were made, they totally ignored the real science and hydrology of the river for political and boosterism means. But this is we're coming up on the post-2026 river management operations guidelines that the states are negotiating right now. And it's very complicated. Right now, there's not clear agreement between the upper basin and the lower basin. And with the new bowling ball of the Trump administration hitting the pins, it's going to be interesting. So pay attention. We'll be posting and talking about all of these things as we go down the road here.
Thank you, Ken. And by the way, thank you for the photo. Would you just take 1 second here? Tell us what that photo is quickly.
That is a photo of Hoover Dam, and I took it 10 years ago. So the reservoir is even lower. But to give you an idea of the situation, that wall in the front is that rusty, unused wall is the outlet structure, the overflow. And if you want to get real scale for it, you look up on the dam and you can see people on the dam itself looking over the edge. Gives you a much better scale than the usual shots you see of the whole face of the dam, the reservoir, and a thin white line. This gives it a little more punch as to just how low the reservoirs and the river have become over the last 25 years.
Well, thank you. And we're going to move on to a different kind of river scenario. And Debbie, you're up again. Where's Debbie?
I
You're
don't have a
muted.
lot to say. I'm not the chair of this team. Hank Grady from Kentucky is chair of the Mississippi River Grassroots Network team. We started because of the dead zone that's in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's why our goals relate to that issue. So in order to change the amount of dead zone there is, we have to reduce the amount of nutrient pollution going into the Gulf. And so this one sentence really says a lot. Implement clean water standards for nitrogen and phosphorus. I think I can say with almost 95% accuracy, most states don't have clean water standards for nitrogen and phosphorus. Their NPDES permits for discharges into streams do not have standards. The state doesn't adopt standards. We also have a goal of natural floodplains. And there is periodic flooding along the Mississippi. We promote sensible approaches to flood control and development. And the last bullet is what we're spending most of our time on right now. Their non-point pollution is recognized from agriculture as a serious problem. And the members of the team have gone to DC. I've talked to my people in Congress about the importance of giving farmers the tools to deal with their polluted runoff. So our core team is people from Tennessee, Kentucky, Iowa. I know we're looking for people from Minnesota to join, Arkansas, and Louisiana, Mississippi. We meet once a month, the last Monday at 5 o'clock Central Time. That's all I have, Elaine.
I appreciate it, Debbie, and we're actually going to segue to Gloria, who's going to tell us more about nutrient issues and what they're causing locally. Thank you, Gloria. Can you unmute? Thank you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. The Harmful Algal Blooms team, or HABs team, is one of the newest of the Grassroots network teams, having been around for only about 3 years. And we are thrilled that the Sierra Club is giving some space to this important issue, as over 70% of the lakes in the United States are producing harmful algal blooms. And while we certainly are a clean water focused team, we are a sub-team of the toxics team. That said, we coordinate with the Water Sentinels on various things. We coordinate with the Food and Agriculture team on the Farm Bill, the CAFOs team, chapters, groups, non-Sierra Club organizations, anyone really. But we have a core team of 7 members from around the country, and we're always looking for more. Our primary focus has been education. We hold webinars and publish fact sheets, and our listserv has about 40 members with almost daily posts on articles and webinars having to do with nutrient pollution and harmful algal blooms. If you want to learn more about HABs, please join our listserv. 2 years ago, we hosted a teen hydrology team workshop for 6 weeks with featuring underserved youth. We brought them out to a lake once a week for 6 weeks, where they learned about watersheds, pollutions, harmful algal blooms, identifying HABs with microscopes, testing for toxins, and what they liked the best was enjoying the lake by kayaking and fishing when HABs were not present. Last year, in addition to our regular educational activities, we facilitated a 9-month class on the Clean Water Act with curriculum from the River Network and guest speakers. We had over 50 participants from around the country. This year, the HABs team is hard at work creating a citizen scientist group with 3 hands-on workshops in Illinois. We're coordinating with the Illinois chapter, the Chicago Water team, and the University of Illinois on these. We'll be holding virtual trainings for other states. We are hosting a mini sub-grant for citizen scientists to apply for cyanotoxin testing kits so they can test their own lakes and provide an early warning to their lake users and report HABs to their counties, states, and the federal EPA. These citizen scientists will be able to share their findings, discuss with other citizen scientists, and consult with our experts on a listserv we're setting up. We are very excited about this project. At the end of these presentations, you'll see a link to join everybody's listserv, including ours. Please join the HABs listserv if you are interested in learning more about HABs, training to become a citizen scientist and monitoring your lake, applying for cyanotoxin test kits, attending our planning meetings, which meet once a month on a Monday evening, and possibly becoming a member of our core team, or any other issue you want to discuss or collaborate with us. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Gloria. I appreciate it. And we're going to talk about another group working with a toxics team. Stephen's going to cover this. Stephen, unmute.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I've lost the, I just wanted you to know that I've lost the slide deck, whoever's sharing that, I've lost that, but that's no problem for me. My name is Stephen Brown, and I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm a semi-retired pharmaceutical chemist, and so, you know, I understand most of the aspects from drug discovery to drug development, and so I'm pretty familiar with all the all the technical aspects of toxic and chemical topics. So I formed this group in 2018 because I was looking for things to do after retirement, and I thought PFAS, out of all the contaminants, I think PFAS is the thing that would be to focus on. And our core group consists of some 10 people. 3 of them are attending here, Amy, Kyle, and Clint Richmond. And David Dow also works with us occasionally, and Nancy Muse. And Mike Altschulter is a club member in Oklahoma that we're just starting a project with. So, the slide I submitted basically tells you the major points and the major strategy. So what we do is our core team advises chapter members and other people that are interested in sampling for PFAS contaminations nationwide. We've been working with a number of states. We have a number of reports already done. The first thing we did was worked on the Sludge in the Garden report. If you look at in 2018, that Doris Solarius is also on our team, and she helped get us involved with testing biosolids for PFAS. And the report was eventually issued by the Sierra Club in collaboration with the Ecology Center here in Ann Arbor. And it's called Sludge in the Garden, so you can go look it up just do a Google search on the club website. So the idea here is that Michigan was one of the first states to do a really comprehensive government-financed testing for PFAS contaminations. This would have never happened except for the Flint water crisis, which I think a lot of you know about. So our Republican governor at the time, Rick Snyder, in 2018, set up a multi-agency state task group to sample for PFAS contaminations. Statewide, they focused on drinking waters first, and then surface waters and wildlife. PFAS have been manufactured in millions of metric tons worldwide since 1945. You know, they are Teflon pans, and they're in almost every consumer product, including toilet paper, if you can believe it. And these chemicals are also called forever chemicals because they do not break down, either in the body or the environment. And many of them tend to accumulate. Bioaccumulate, which means that if the water you drink has, say, 1 part per trillion, you'll eventually get 1 part per billion in your bloodstream, and or more. So and most of these have never been tested for their impacts on human health, but the data that is out there is really compelling. For example, if you have local waters that are contaminated with even say a few parts per trillion, this will affect, you can measure the effect in cholesterol metabolism in newborn children and in the effectiveness of the standard pediatric vaccine schedules. These chemicals cause a lifelong attenuation of the immune system, and also perturb cholesterol metabolism such that your cholesterol rates rise. So it's entirely possible that these chemicals are responsible for much of the cholesterol problems that people have here, not just the regular diet. And they interact with the human body in a very, with the coenzyme A system, which is a central metabolic kind of way station for almost all biochemical processes. And they also can mimic different hormones that interact with transcription factors that regulate gene expression in various tissues, in various bodies. Freshwater fish are highly contaminated. Here in the Great Lakes and in other places where they've been tested. But the point I wanted to make here with this team is that Michigan's done a good job. Our state legislators are aware of PFAS contaminations. They're aware of public health. They're doing some things. There's some bills in the legislature. There's some bills in Congress, but many states in the United States have refused to, refuse to do anything about PFAS, or even don't want to hear about it. So the idea is to get members, Sierra Club members in states that are falling behind on addressing PFAS contaminations, to get them to sample their waters, their drinking water, their surface waters that are their fish, their wildlife, to take samples, and then we will pay the cost of having it tested for PFAS and provide them the data that they can use to wave in the faces of their elected officials.
That sounds like a
Because,
good plan.
Thanks. Yeah, because I believe, I something that Edwards Deming said long ago struck me that, without data, you're just another person with an opinion.
Thank you. That's good point, Stephen. We're going to move on to our last presenter. If you have a question for Stephen, make sure you put it in the Q&A. And I see that he's got some future webinars planned, and I think they'll be posted on his website, which you can visit too. So our final speaker today is Darlene, who's going to talk about wastewater residuals work. Darlene, make sure you're good. You're unmuted. Good.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going off screen to give my presentation. I'm Darlene Shanfall. I chair the Wastewater Residuals Grassroots Network team. We educate communities about sewage waste and ways to stop land application of these wastes. Land application includes the reuse of both the sewage solids and the effluent for fertilizer and compost. Additionally, we educate about potential problems with the reuse of sewage effluent for potable water. These practices poison our food, air, water bodies, pets, wildlife, and human health, resulting in diseases and deaths, and contribute to climate change. This team shares its toolkit with communities new to the issue. We hold webinars, we create and distribute handouts, we table at fairs, hold monthly meetings, educate elected officials, and work with communities to stop the reuse of these toxic wastes. But some facts. Wastewater treatment plants process rather than treat, and they are aging. These facilities were never built to treat. Sewage wastes contain well over 350,000 chemicals and an array of pathogens, including the PFAS, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, personal care products, hospital waste, bacteria and viruses, plastics, septage, industrial waste, and much more. Together, they form unique contaminants. The incoming waste, called influent, undergo various types of processing. Then the wastes are separated into solids and liquids. The liquids are called effluent. Typically, the solids are spread on land in farms and forests and sold as commercial compost. Fertilizers are often encapsulated with microplastics designed to break down into smaller pieces of plastic once they're spread on the farm fields. Plastics in our diet and from elsewhere have contaminated every organ in the human body and that of the wildlife. Most amounts are found in the brains of Alzheimer. The effluent is piped out into surface water bodies, even from those communities that get their potable water from there. However, more and more effluent is being used for potable waters, as well as non-potable waters on land for landscaping, golf courses, etc. There's no truth in labeling. Consumers are told they are safe and beneficial because EPA said so, because they contain certain heavy metals, nitrates, phosphorus, and potassium. Millions of dried metric tons of sewage waste are produced annually, and a third of this, for an example, California uses a third of theirs for fertilizer to grow their commercial crops in. Sewage solids have contaminated almost 20 million acres of U.S. croplands from the PFAS just by themselves, and leading states like Maine and Connecticut and some local governments from around the country are now banning the use of sewage waste. This started in 1990 when EPA approved recycling the solids, claiming that they had beneficial use for soil amendments. And you can read the history in David L. Lewis's book, Science for Sale. It was published in 2014. EPA allowed each state to opt in. They all did, and each state writes its own regulations. Regarding recycled effluent for potable use, each state or community decides cleanup methods. Yet, small breweries can get this water free, do whatever cleansing, and voila, you have microbrews. Humans drink, bathe, and cook with this contaminated water. There have been no epidemiological studies, and humans are guinea pigs. Once on land, the edible plants uptake the toxins and pathogens. California, as I said, California grows a third of its crops in this waste. Spread on land, the waste migrate off-site with rain, fog, and wind, and into the surface water bodies during stormwater runoff months, violating the No Dumping and the Clean Water Acts. Sea level rise, storm surges, and flooding threaten wastewater processing plants situated along the coastlines. These back up the sewage, and untreated raw sewage runs right out into the open water bodies. Most of these facilities are old and need to be replaced. There are advanced treatment methods that can minimize the toxins and leftover amounts of waste. They won't be clean, but cleaner, but not safe to grow food with. So what to do? New plants should be upgraded to the highest standards to minimize the residual amount of toxins and leftover waste. Every one of us should be pushing back against decision makers if they want to recycle this waste for water use, grazing lands, or growing food. And you can join the Wastewater Residuals Grassroots Network team and help us help others. We meet the last Tuesday of each month at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Darlene. We will make this last page on the slide deck available as well as the other materials, but it does include the links to the various web pages. And the web pages then often have a way to contact individuals. We're going to open it up now with Shruti to do Q&A, and if you have not dropped a question into the Q&A box, Shruti, I'll look in the chat and see if there are additional questions there. But let's go to the Q&A first, and it's your floor.
Great. Thank you so much. And I want to thank all the presenters for sharing such useful information. And as you can all see, how water really flows into so many of the issues that we are working or thinking about as it impacts climate change, whether it's PFAS or we're talking about food and ag, and we're talking about so many other things. So water quality and affordability is really an issue that intersects over several issues. Just a quick reminder to everyone, when you put your question in, and I have 2 questions in the Q&A chat, the responders, anyone who chooses to respond, will have 2 or 3 minutes to give a response. So keep your responses to that time frame. And then, of course, we will connect we will be sharing information later on. Elaine will be sending an email, and you'll have the contact information for all the presenters, their website, and so on and so forth. So the first question in the chat that we have is from Patricia, who says, is anyone working on dissemination? Here in New Jersey, Cape May, we must filter water to keep Atlantic Ocean from infiltrating freshwater streams and rivers. So if someone is working on that issue, please raise your hand. Feel free to unmute yourself, jump in and respond.
Let me ask, was that for one of the was it on one of the presentations?
I do not remember that, but if somebody did present it, they could respond to the question.
Okay.
It might be Stephen.
Question?
The question is anyone working on dissimulation? Did I say that right? Patricia, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, it's desalination. It's
Desalination.
taking the salt out of water.
Yeah, thanks so much. I had,
Okay, and what about desalination?
Is
Well,
anyone on the call familiar with it and working on it?
Yeah,
Oh, I know how it works technically. It's highly energy intensive. Requires high pressure through membranes. I mean, it's how drinking water is produced from seawater.
California is working a lot on it, and if anybody here is with the California chapter,
Rue raised her hand. I don't know if she's working on it in California. She's there in California.
I'd like to comment on it too.
I'm not finished yet though.
I
Okay,
give
friends,
me a minute.
so if I can just do a quick reminder, since we have multiple people who would like to respond, if you want to put your name in the chat or use your Zoom hand, I can call on folks. Go ahead, Stephen, thanks.
So, these membranes have very small pores. They can get rid of salt, so they can get rid of almost everything else very efficiently. But they require high pressure, they're energy intensive, and that's about it. Usually, I mean, since the water is so pure, it's distasteful. So usually you need to buy packets of salt to add back to the water to make it more palatable. That's it.
Thanks, Stephen. Rue?
California does have a number of places that are exploring desalinization because of water shortages and the drought. And everything Stephen said is spot on. It's very energy intensive. And then you wind up with a lot of salt left over in English terms. Stephen really say it scientifically. But basically, you know what you've got left, you have to do something with after you've expended an enormous amount of energy. There are other things that are happening, and I think what the questioner implied was they're having saline intrusion. And so there are places where wells are drilled to insert, sometimes it's tertiary treated wastewater, sometimes it's regular water, along a coastline to prevent saline intrusion into groundwater. So it's a complicated effort in order to prevent groundwater from becoming oversalinated. So it's a very complicated issue, and I think Florida also has some examples of it.
Great, thanks. Darlene?
There's another aspect here. Desalination sucks in a lot of the zooplankton that's needed for the ocean animals. It also sucks in a lot of the toxins that are in the water, and this is true down in San Diego. So how much of these desalination plants think about or can clean the water, I don't know. But another issue is the zooplankton that has to be
I was
considered.
just worried about.
Great. I see Elaine's hand up, and then we will move to the next
Yeah,
question.
I would
Elaine.
just
Oh,
say,
wow.
California, the Angeles chapter has fought this, and if you're interested in how to run a campaign, you may want to contact them directly.
Great. Thank you for that, Elaine. All right, we're going to move to the next question, which is from Wayne Miller. What methods are available to differentiate toxic from non-toxic algal blooms? Who wants to take that question? All right, I see your hand, Gloria. Go for it.
So I think Wayne used the word harmful. Cyanobacteria, not all of them produce toxins, and the ones that do produce toxins don't necessarily produce toxins at any particular point in time. And the only way to know if a bloom is toxic is to test it. And if you want to join our citizen scientist team, we will get you a toxic test and train you how to use it. The other, getting a little more nerdy here, is we'll be training people how to identify cyanobacteria, not by species, but by genus, to determine if you have a cyanobacteria that is capable of producing a toxin. If it's not capable, then you don't have to waste your toxin testing kit on it. But besides being toxic, harmful algal blooms are harmful, even if they're not toxic. If you have a large enough bloom, the respiration of the bloom and the decay of the dying cyanobacteria use up the oxygen and can tank the dissolved oxygen in your lake and produce fish kills. And I think that covers it. Any more? Is that good, Wayne?
Thanks, Gloria. Wayne, do you have a direct response or question?
Yes, I asked because in New York State, DEC does not directly test in most cases. They ask people to make reports, and they may or may not go and observe. And then based on the observation and the reports they get, they make a determination off-site.
Okay.
So I had my question had two parts. One was about the tests themselves, and the other was because algal blooms are an indicator for phosphorus and nitrogen pollution. Is the team only dealing with harmful blooms, or are you feeding back information about nutrient overloads?
We are we have webinars on nutrient reduction, and we have been working with the food and agriculture team and the CAFO team. If you have an idea on how we can advocate better nationally on nutrient reduction, we would love to have you join our team.
Awesome. Thanks. Let's move on to the next question. And again, folks should connect after this call. So next question is from David Doe. Did I say that right, or is it Dow?
It's Dow.
Thank you for correcting me.
He's a routine participant in our events.
All right, thanks. I appreciate being corrected. And the question is, since seafood contains microplastics and other toxic chemicals, PFAS, methyl mercury, etc., how do we reduce these contaminants? Yes, go ahead, Darlene.
I work a lot on aquaculture issues as well. There's the only thing that I can think of is that there has to be better oversight. There has to be more testing by third parties, not relying on those that are growing the animals. And there has to be warning sites, warning information to consumers. This stuff is in the organs of these animals. And you don't know that. And when you go to the market and you buy fish or shellfish, you're not going to get out a magnifying glass and look for the plastics, which are much too problematic to even see if they're that small. They have other diseases. We just need more government control and truth in labeling. And it's a great discussion. It'd be great if you joined our team and we can, Grassroots Network, Wastewater Grassroots Network team, and we can talk more about this. Or contact me personally and I can go into a lot more depth
Thank you,
about this.
Caroline.
There are lawsuits all over the country about this situation.
Thanks so much. Stephen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I've spent a couple of years looking through all the technical and data on microplastics because they're a local pollution threat that we recognized maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I would just say that the Beyond Plastics campaign, which is led by a former EPA regional director,
Oh,
I think is the most effective environmental NGO in this space. So I would recommend looking at what they've done and then see what happens because it's called Beyond Plastics. So just they're based in, she's living in Burlington, Vermont. So just check them out.
Yeah, and I also want to mention real quick, based on the topics that have come up, that the National Conservation Policy Committee recently appointed a task force. I believe Clint Richmond is on it, is working on developing a policy for the Sierra Club on PFAS, right? Clint, yes, I see your head nodding.
I don't know if I'm on the PFAS. I'm on the plastics task
Oh,
force.
the microplastics, that's correct. Well, there's the plastics.
I'm
Well, a
happy to
plastic,
help.
right.
Happy to help out on the PFAS one since we have 4 members of the core team on this call. Actually, we have
Okay, great.
a lot of talent on our sub.
Awesome. I'll follow up. But basically, these are the topics coming up. And as we also recently had a task force work on the issue of synthetic turf, I mean, I learned from so many different perspectives on our task force because there were areas like Colorado and others who also talked about how scarcity of water or the landscape and others really impact their ability to have natural grass. But really, the microplastics from synthetic turf are really bad for our water, and they go into our streams, and quality of water is really contaminated for those reasons. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, but let me double check. I do not, and also don't see any hands up yet. I know that we have 8 minutes left, so I will actually pass it on back to Elaine because I think Elaine was going to share more information in terms of how people can contact each other, the website links. And so definitely stay connected. And I think this is the time I'll just add and say that it is important for us to lean on each other because so many of you here on the call have so much knowledge and are already working on the issue. So I just really appreciate the effort that was put here in organizing this forum for us to talk to each other and learn from each other and know that we can be a resource to each other. So thanks for all the incredible work you are doing. And Elaine, I'm going to pass it on back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks all around to all the people who did their presentations and for their work on their individual teams. As I said at the beginning, we are all volunteer run, and I know how hard all of you are working. It's a lot of us are retired, and I know I'm working harder now than when I had a job and was being paid. And so I want to honor all of you right now. The links are there to contact each of the teams, and through those links you can get on. I think everyone has a discussion listserv. And there's usually a direct contact to the leader of each of the teams so that you can get a direct email address. For example, For Water Sentinels, you can get my email address, Debbie's email address, the Colorado River person's email address. So there's a way to contact it. Every team meets monthly. All meetings are open. Everyone's looking for more core members. So the door is definitely wide open on this. And there's definitely, as you can see, a lot of water work. I mean, our team works with the food and ag team, with a lot of teams. You can see water is everywhere. Water connects everywhere. My goal when I started doing this volunteer work was to elevate water as a priority in the Sierra Club. We're inching our way up there, but we are not where I think we should be as a priority. And so when we're gathering here, and this is all Trudy's idea, which shows that she's behind what we're doing with water, we need to keep working together. There is power in organizing together, and power in numbers. And so this was a great effort. I think we stayed within our time frame, which is amazing. And I would I put into chat, because I didn't mention when my team meets. Water Sentinels, first Thursday of the month. Western, second Thursday of the month. Book Club, first Wednesday of the month. The book clubs, by the way, we're on our 5th book, and we've met with every single author. So it's a great organization there. So we will be sending you the slides and the recording, and I want to thank the team, everybody again, for putting this together. And any other parting thoughts from anyone? Trudy?
I see, Darlene, your hand up. I have a quick comment, which is, I also think it's really important that we elevate the work that the Grassroots Network teams are doing. And it starts with our own networks, right? People that you know in your community, your friends, and just using your own networks to spread the word, because not only will it help people see all of you as Sierra Club activists doing this incredible work, but also asking people to lean in to support the Sierra Club, which is so important at this time. So again, thanks all, and I'm going to give it to Darlene, who has a comment.
Well, thank you. Thank everyone. And something I brought up with at the National Board so many months ago is that so many of us are working on issues that overlap, and this is a perfect example. And what would be wonderful is if National could bring all of us together for a 2 or 3 day event where we could really coalesce all our information, decide how we can better work together, bring out the larger picture to National and all our members, and really get some major legislation going in Congress. But I think we need more help from National to bring all of us together at a, whatever you call it, symposium or workshop or blah, 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 and how we can work together as one larger team. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Darlene. I want to do a quick direct response to that. I appreciate you raising that, and I think it's a really great idea. Definitely, I would love to get such suggestions from all of you. I also want to share a couple of quick thoughts here, which is, we know that we have a Grassroots Network teams who do get grants from the Grassroots Network. So that's one way of looking at when there are those grant opportunities to be able to work with the Water Sentinels team, everyone coming together. If there is a proposal and you get a grant, then it allows an opportunity for folks to get together and think about how we set goals that align with the priorities to be able to have an impact in a strong way. Also, I will say that the chapter assembly is coming up. I know that grassroots network teams, representatives, as well as chapter chairs and chapter directors will be going to that in April. And I would encourage you to share information about these issues that are so important to you and the work that you are doing with them if you are not going to that, and making sure that when those conversations are happening, that they can also share the information, because that's how we make sure that our community is learning about these critical issues, the effort that's been put in, and how we can all work together. And I will definitely, I'm making notes and I'll make sure I share that as well. Stephen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Shruti, I want to thank you for building these bridges among the Grassroots Network participants and with this meeting to chapters, including chapters in Tennessee, I believe it is, in April 27th, I think. Amy Kyle and Dan Firth from our team will be attending. My son's getting married in New York City on that day, so that's that. But I would also encourage anybody here who's very interested to try starting a grassroots network team on microplastics. This is the other emerging contaminant of concern for public health and wildlife, because it definitely interferes with the reproduction of fish and other aquatic organisms.
Thank
And
you.
so I would encourage anybody to take that up.
Thank you, Stephen. Congratulations on your son's wedding. And in the last 30 seconds, I'll give two more ideas, which is if you want to highlight the work of your Grassroots Network team, feel free to send me an email with information, especially when you organize something, so that I can lift that up in the email updates that I do. And if your team is doing any fly-ins to DC and having meetings with legislators or planning meetings, feel free to reach out again. I'd be more than happy to attend. And since that's local to my area, it will not be an added cost to you. So again, here to support you in any way that I can. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And Elaine, I'm giving it back to you.
Yeah, well, Shruti, please put your email address in chat. I have it, but we didn't include you. I'm sorry. So everyone watch for that. I would just say that Shruti has been so accessible. And, a lot of you are getting her weekly reports where she tells you everything that's going on in the Sierra Club. Huge effort on her part. I forgot to mention that. I think we, if you got your information in there, Shruti, it may be how we're going to conclude. I
did. I put it in.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, this was, I think, a real success, and I hope that we carry on from here. There's a lot to do. There are a lot of great people working on things, and so I think we shall just bid you farewell for the day. And yeah, thanks, Gloria. All right, everyone. Debbie, I think you're the host. You can close us.